By order of the Overseer Council, the following file is Level 4/4812 classified. Unauthorized access is forbidden. Item Number 4812. Level 4 Secret. Containment Class, see below. Disruption Class Eki. Risk Class Danger. Designation Memorandum. Due to the unique nature of SCP-4812-S, -E, and -K's relationship, a single object designation is used to denote the three entities of the group. However, each are considered their own individual anomalies, and are described within this file as such. Classification Memorandum. September 2018. Due to the unique nature of SCP-4812-S, E, and K, each entity has been assigned an individual containment class. SCP-4812-S, Safe. Pending further evaluation. SCP-4812-E, Euclid. As of August 20th, 2003. SCP-4812-K, Keter. Pending evaluation, as SCP-4812-K is currently uncontained. See Addendum 4812.4. Updated Containment Memorandum. Per Foundation Protocol 2513.99, the ongoing containment of SCP-4812 has been transferred to the jurisdiction of Project Paragon. All other extant containment procedures remain in place. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-4812-S. SCP-4812-S is contained in its location of discovery. The entrance to the cave containing SCP-4812-S is to be sealed by 3 maximum security vault doors. Entrance to SCP-4812-S's site of containment is forbidden to any individuals without proper credentials. Under no circumstances should SCP-4812-S be exposed to any amount of light. SCP-4812-S is to be interacted with only by members of the fully blind MTF Vestige 12, Northern Star. Under no circumstances should SCP-4812-S be exposed to either SCP-4812-E or SCP-4812-K. SCP-4812-E. SCP-4812-E is contained within a thermally controlled vault at Site-80. Due to the nature of SCP-4812-E's anomalous capabilities, its containment chamber must be kept at a constant 1400 degrees Celsius. SCP-4812-E itself is contained within a tank of molten iron. Direct maintenance of SCP-4812-E's containment chamber must take place outside of the cell due to the intense heat within. Special remote drones, equipped with hafnium carbide exteriors, are to be used in maintaining the interiors of SCP-4812-E's containment cell. A drop in internal temperature of more than 50 degrees Celsius must be considered a breach of containment. Under no circumstances should SCP-4812-E be exposed to either SCP-4812-S or SCP-4812-K. SCP-4812-K. SCP-4812-K is currently uncontained. Due to the location and nature of SCP-4812-K, it is unlikely that its existence will be exposed, but caution must be taken in ensuring that any information pertaining to the entity is suppressed. Foundation information security assets are to monitor web traffic for any images, accounts, or recordings of SCP-4812-K. Further research into the nature of SCP-4812-K is required to prevent additional exposure should the entity present itself on Earth once again. Under no circumstances should SCP-4812-K be exposed to SCP-4812-S and SCP-4812-E. Description: SCP-4812 is the group designation for 3 anomalous entities, SCP-4812-S, E, and K, and a series of recovered documents, SCP-4812-1, that describe them. SCP-4812-S is a large, amorphous entity located in a subterranean cavern near Els, France. SCP-4812-S is attached to the walls of its cavern by a large number of long, adhesive-covered appendages that extend out of the main mass of the entity. Similar appendages cover SCP-4812-S's entire body, though the majority are curled and tucked into its central mass. Each of the appendages, and indeed SCP-4812-S's entire body, is covered in fine, hydrophobic hair. SCP-4812-S is a Class 13 visual hazard. Any living being that perceives SCP-4812-S visually will experience a violent biological reaction that is invariably fatal. Direct visual perception of SCP-4812-S is akin to exposure of the eyes, brain, and nervous system to an extremely caustic acid. The effect of SCP-4812-S is immediate and cannot be avoided once exposed. Victims will experience severe pain, bleeding through the skin and orifices, paralysis, asphyxiation, and eventually death. The effect persists across all visual media, as images and video recordings of SCP-4812 will carry the same effect, though slightly less immediate and violent. Due to the nature of SCP-4812-S, it is unknown what the entity's true appearance is. Individuals interacting with SCP-4812-S must do so in total darkness and wearing airtight suits, as even the minute and imperceptible amount of light naturally emitted by human beings is enough to trigger the effect of SCP-4812-S. It is unknown how light interacts with the surface of SCP-4812-S, as any individual who has looked at it for any amount of time has already died. Even the hairs on SCP-4812-S's body, when shaved off and exposed to light, create a similar albeit lessened effect as the main body of the entity. Exposure to the hairs, under light, typically results in severe nausea, hallucinations, and swelling of the eyes and brain. While this is not necessarily fatal if exposure is limited and the subject is given immediate medical attention, this exposure is still extremely dangerous and nearly always results in death. SCP-4812-S's ability is contained by darkness, as humans are capable of interacting with the entity if they cannot perceive it visually. Beyond being an extreme anomalous visual hazard, SCP-4812-S is otherwise immobile and does not appear to react to touch or noise. SCP-4812-S's body is composed of organic matter, though spectral analysis has not been possible due to the nature of SCP-4812-S's anomalous makeup. It is believed that SCP-4812-S's tendril-like appendages extend deep into the earth around the cavern in which it is contained, though proper analysis of this has been difficult. SCP-4812-E is a large humanoid, approximately 15 meters in height, entity composed primarily of platinum, with traces of tungsten and other metallic compounds. SCP-4812-E's features are vaguely skeletal in appearance, though when in containment, they are not visible due to the effect of high temperature on its metallic body. SCP-4812-E is a near-perfect heatsink. The temperature of its body, when uncontained, maintains a constant 0.000000031 Kelvin. SCP-4812-E does not experience thermal exchange. Instead of acting in a way that would eventually reach thermal equilibrium, SCP-4812-E absorbs energy at a net loss to its surroundings. The rate at which this occurs is extremely rapid, and SCP-4812-E is capable of reducing a 10 meter by 10 meter by 10 meter containment cell at room temperature to near absolute zero in roughly 16 seconds. Due to this, SCP-4812-E is continuously surrounded by an opaque field of frozen air and water, and its true appearance is impossible to see unless exposed to high temperatures. Exposure to SCP-4812-E is nearly invariably lethal. Subjects that are exposed to SCP-4812-E usually succumb in seconds as the temperature of the air around them plummets and the water within their bodies freezes. Even heavily insulated protective suits will only allow the wearer moments of protection from the effects of exposure. SCP-4812-E's effect may be mitigated, however, by exposure to extreme heat. While SCP-4812-E's effect is rapid when uncontained, if exposed to extremely high temperatures, SCP-4812-E's effect weakens substantially. This has made SCP-4812-E containable, so long as the entity is contained under constant high temperatures. SCP-4812-K is a massive, silver-winged insectoid, bearing similarities to both stag beetles and scorpions. SCP-4812-K is roughly 180 meters in length, with 6 appendages, the forward 2 leading to large pincers, and a long segmented tail, ending in a pointed serrated barb. However, in place of insectoid mouth and eyes, SCP-4812-K has the face of a man, no larger than that of a typical human male. As such, SCP-4812-K's face is dwarfed by the rest of its body. SCP-4812-K has 4 wings that extend out of its back, and its entire body is covered in a thick, highly reflective biological chitin. SCP-4812-K spends the overwhelming majority of its time in the upper stratosphere, where it rarely moves in any perceptible way except to flap its wings to maintain altitude. The existence of SCP-4812-K was not realized until the discovery of SCP-4812-1, due in parts to SCP-4812-K's near invisibility and its high rate of speed as it travels. Due to the reflective silver chitin its body is composed of, and the fact that SCP-4812-K produces no heat and does not reflect sound. SCP-4812-K routinely reaches speeds in excess of 800 km per hour. SCP-4812-K does not respond to attempts to communicate with it, and will engage vehicles that draw too close to it, within roughly 700 meters. Several attempts have been made to secure SCP-4812-K in order to move it to a containment cell. However, all attempts have thus far failed. Fighter jets and remote assault drones have been able to keep pace with the entity, but are easily incapacitated by the entity's raw physical strength and size. Additionally, no weaponry used on SCP-4812-K to date has been able to damage it in any perceptible way. On the contrary, anything that strikes the entity seemingly rebounds with the same kinetic energy as it did on approach, leading researchers to believe that SCP-4812-K is, in some way, a near-perfect reflector. Addendum 4812.1 Contents of SCP-4812-1 SCP-4812-1 is a series of recovered documents and artifacts recovered from a collection of anomalous items previously held by Dutch collector Marcus de Wees before his death. The collection, given the name the Containment set, contains the following items. Likely named after 18th century English archaeologist and occultist Winston J. Conington, whose research led Foundation agents to the discovery of SCP-2254, SCP, and SCP. 16 coins of various shapes and sizes, none of which account for any known denomination of currency. 5 papyrus scrolls, Egyptian in origin, that appear to be ancient star maps. Analysis of these maps indicate that there was once more notes written in the margins. However, these notes have been bleached out and are no longer decipherable. 3 large tomes, bound in leather-wrapped hardwood, penned in German, full of what appear to be archaic coordinates. One of the books also marks changes in temperature. These books were seemingly written over the course of many years. A brass spyglass with a cracked crystal lens. A piece of the cracked lens is missing. Looking through the spyglass, several small, ornate mechanisms are visible within. However, they appear to have been damaged in the past and are no longer functional. A thick burlap sack that apparently contains at least 3 more consecutive burlap sacks, with a thick gelatinous mass at its center. Looking at this sack tends to make subjects feel ill and suffer from a slight burning sensation behind the eyes. A pair of glasses with iron frames and solid iron lenses. One of the lenses is damaged. When worn by human subjects, a slight glow is visible through the iron lens, when looking at the burlap sack. A thin circlet, made of gold and platinum, has 3 prongs situated around the entire ring, 2 of which appear to have been broken off near the base. The third contains a small glass sphere that is warm to the touch. A journal written by Winston J. Connaughton contains depictions of all 3 SCP-4812 entities, and the personal research of Dr. Connaughton himself. Of the 3 tomes containing coordinates, the second has a short section written in Italian by, presumably, a different author than the rest of the tome. The second tome is believed to be the only tome that has a single author. The beginning of the section is a list of names and dates, with an orthodox dating system. Many of the dates are written with another number beside the year, such as 1343, 89, listed next to the name Tornord of Yair. After the list of names comes a section where the author appears to have been listing notes to include in a longer section that comes afterwards. The translated text of the longer section is available below. Of all those old kingdoms and empires whose names were lost to the passing of time, or the cruel mechanism of their enemies, perhaps none is greater or spoken with more respect than that of the great house of Apollyon, the Sky Kings of Old Europe. The first of those great kings, Harion I von Apollyon, is said to have descended from the blood of the King of Crimson Skies, often called Aesum, the First Man, a legendary figure in the writings of the 3 Archmeisters of King Richard of Lionheart's court. The Sky. The text cuts off abruptly here, but continues in the next paragraph. A mark is made at the end of that line, as if to note it for revision. The Sky Kings are said to have ruled Old Europe for 100 generations, though they faced opposition from the Daevas to the east, and those faithful to the Iron God in the south. Their kingdom never faltered, and their conquests were fruitful. It was the conquered foes of the House of Apollyon who first named the King Idas I von Apollyon Sky King, for it was said his reach extended past the bounds of the earth and into the heavens above. In the 890th year of their rule, the Sky King Sarus VIII von Apollyon is said to have grown bored with ruling and demanded a conquest of another greater realm beyond their own. In his arrogance, he looked past the lands of man and towards those across the sea, where the fair folk were said to live. The Sky King boarded his ships, and with the largest army ever assembled, drove with fury across the waves towards the continent to the west. The fair folk, consumed with their own conflicts, with the emergent power of the Children of the Moon to their south, did not expect the arrival of Apollyon, and were consumed in a fortnight. Their people scattered, and their nobility stripped down and mutilated, in accordance with the customs of the conquerors. Only a single survivor of the brutality, a Fey princess, was brought back in iron chains across the sea to suffer further horrors. The princess, though, had no intentions of arriving on the far shores of Old Europe. As the king's fleet passed the great eye of the sea, she cast a wicked and wild spell upon the House of Apollyon, and the Sky King in particular. As a storm came upon them, and brought many men and ships to the bottom of the sea, the princess prayed to an old and nameless god for vengeance upon her captors. Legend says the princess's iron chains caught fire, and burned the king's flagship to cinders, and that Sarus VIII himself was dragged into the deep by those same chains as he tried to throw them overboard. The fleet, however, did return to Old Europe, where the young Sarus IX von Apollyon now ruled his father's kingdom. As retribution for the curse the princess had cast upon his father, Sarus IX threw the princess into a dungeon deep beneath the earth and buried it, leaving her to rot eternally in the darkness. Afterwards, as a bulwark against the dark magic of the fair folk that his father's conquest may have brought upon his house, Sarus IX appointed 4 great knights to defend his kingdom. They were Lohair the Fierce, Lancelot the Conqueror, Hector the Stalwart, and Ogier the Faithful, but the princess. The text ends here, and no additional continuation of the narrative has yet been discovered. While many of the other items are generally unremarkable, of particular interest to researchers is the journal of Dr. Connaughton. The majority of the text in the journal is written in a cipher, with very few sections, usually small notes that are not relevant to the rest of the text, that are written in German. A few short sections have been translated, due to a section of the cipher being inscribed on the inside of one of the larger tomes. The text contained therein has been translated, and is available below. The archivist of that great house named the first of the great profanities in the 6 chapters of the reign of the King Cyrus IX von Apollyon when he wrote, "Sorrowful was the Sky King Apollyon, when the voice of the enemy beneath the earth spoke to the souls of his knights, and he did banish them each. The long night settled over his kingdom, and the winter winds came from the east. But Hector did not answer. Down from the far darkness came the Benebenix, what they called the Profane Restrictor, the first of the great profanities. The Benebenix cast a cold hand across the king's only daughter, and in her youth and weakness she did die. The king took upon him the godless lance, and came down to the Benebenix, with nothing but the mammoth's hide between him and the infinite cold, drove that sacred spear into the Benebenix, and put it in the flaming heart of the earth. The star maps vexed me, but tracing them in the sky, and following the movement of the star that cannot be seen, I caught but for a moment a glimpse of the face of the one that Lahire had called the Profane Adamant. The text does not name it, but the Daeva to the east had a name for that star, what they called the Laminellet, or the King of Many Faces. 3 accounts of the Orator Magister of the Daeva King describe the Laminellet, the profane adamant in the tongue of the Great House, appearing as if from a space beyond spaces to the kingdom's ruination. He writes the following: "The binders of blood made empty pacts with empty gods against a hollow Laminellet, and they were cut down. The singers of songs had their voices pulled from their throats, and the legions of their twilight armies broke first their spears against the Laminellet's hide, and then their bodies. And when they had been ground into dust beneath the profane adamant's clattering steps, it took their faces and returned to the skies." Of note, the author here sometimes writes the name Lancelot, when it seems as if Laminellet would be more appropriate. This may be a mistake or mistranslation. The last of the profanities that lay upon the doom of the House of Apollyon was one with no depiction in any text, save for a black smear. This was the King of Horrors, the Profane Dark, the one that festered in the enemy's grave until it soaked through the earth and burst forth like a fetid tide. The curse on the Sky King's lips, as it pulled him into the void, called this great terror Yash, the last foe of man. Without Lahire's sword, Lancelot's mace, Hector's spear, or Ogier's faith, the full might of the sullen sorrow was brought to bear on Apollyon's broken heart, which shattered with his ruined kingdom. Wrath, he spoke. Wrath. 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 I have seen the face of the Laminellet, though only for a moment, and know of the fiery chasm in which the Benebenix seethes, but I dare not seek out Yash, the Profane Dark. The last scroll of the Writings of Cayman of Sicil says, "But the eyes of Yash offer no release into death, only the winding roads of torment that lead to the Puller of Eyes and Sharpener of Spines, where no man returns, and no voices are heard. The Castle of Fire, the King of Crimson Skies, the Reaper of Dreams flees from the eyes of Yash, the last scream of the nameless folk beyond the sea. Men scream out and are silenced. The light of the sun invites order to the most fundamental nature of this world, and the Yash abhors it. Wrath. Wrath. Wrath." Addendum 4812.2 Containment of SCP-4812 Entities. SCP-4812-K has been known to the Foundation since 1964, when it was confused for an experimental U.S. air vehicle while crossing over the northern USSR. After being engaged by Soviet fighters over the Chukchi Sea, SCP-4812-K rapidly ascended to stratospheric heights and disappeared from sight entirely. Shortly thereafter, the entity re-engaged the fighters at high speed, quickly destroying them. Since then, SCP-4812-K has only been detected on a handful of occasions, usually while passing low enough to be detected visually, due to distortions caused by light reflecting against its chitinous exterior. Notably, SCP-4812-K appears to follow a vague path, often passing over the containment sites of both SCP-4812-S and SCP-4812-E, as well as the N. See Addendum 4812.4. The significance of this is not known. See Addendum 4812.4. SCP-4812-E was discovered shortly after the acquisition of SCP-4812-1, when a Foundation Discovery Team investigating a set of coordinates, noted in the third tome, discovered a thermal anomaly beneath a lake near. Further investigation of the site disturbed the Earth and opened a small fissure beneath the lake, which drained lake water into the opening. Shortly afterwards, the site experienced a significant drop in temperature, as SCP-4812-E, which had previously been trapped in a thermal vent beneath the lake, ascended to the surface. The Discovery Team immediately evacuated the site, and MTF ARC-11, Light 'em Up, was scrambled to the site to engage the SCP-4812-E entity. However, due to the rapidly falling temperatures and increasingly dangerous atmospheric conditions being generated at the site, MTF ARC-11 was forced to maintain distance and use long-range artillery weapons to impede the progress of SCP-4812-E as it marched towards the nearest population center. After several hours of shelling over 8 kilometers of land, SCP-4812-E was finally contained when a controlled gas explosion was generated near the entity, followed by an immediate drop of molten slag over it by a remote carrier drone. The slag-covered SCP-4812-E was moved into a mobile electromagnetic kiln and transported to the thermal-controlled deep-well vault at Site-80. SCP-4812-S was included in the notes of Foundation Administrator Frederick Williams as a location of interest, and has been at least vaguely understood since the formation of Foundation precursor occult investigation groups. Prior to Foundation involvement, it was not known that SCP-4812-S was an entity at all. Instead, many groups believed that the cave itself was hazardous to travelers, as none who entered were ever heard from again. Addendum 4812.3 SCP-4812-K Hostile Activity. On June 9, 2002, 3 months after the discovery and containment of SCP-4812-E, SCP-4812-K was observed diverting from its anticipated path towards an area in the North Sea. A Foundation carrier division was diverted to the area, where SCP-4812-K had engaged with a Global Occult Coalition transport ship. The entity, which was unfazed by the conventional weaponry on board the GOC vessel, appeared to be attempting to breach the exterior of the ship. Of note, SCP-4812-K had not ever previously been observed making this sort of unprovoked hostile action, especially at such a low altitude. The Foundation carrier group immediately engaged the entity, and after a short skirmish drove it away from the transport ship. The Foundation carrier group offered assistance to the GOC vessel, but this assistance was denied, and the vessel continued on its course north. Satellite imagery showed the vessel docking in a previously undisclosed port in northern Norway. The incident corresponded with 2 other events involving SCP-4812-E and SCP-4812-S. Throughout the skirmish with SCP-4812-K, SCP-4812-E became increasingly active within its containment vessel, at one point necessitating the activation of previously untested technology to further increase the temperature within the deep well vault to stabilize the entity. At the same time, several tremors were felt near the SCP-4812-S site, and seismographs of the area revealed that a large portion of the cave system had collapsed. Later observation of the site indicates that SCP-4812-S has since moved upward no less than 70 meters. Addendum 4812.4 Secure Correspondence. Note: the following data entry is Level 4/4812 classified, with restrictions. Appropriate clearances are required to access the data file. The following secure transmission was received by Operative Intelligence Command at Site-88, after the events described in Addendum 4812.3. The message was received under the identification credentials of Global Occult Coalition Commander Daniela Met. Secure transmission. Do not disseminate. Global Occult Coalition Central Command. Notice: by the authority of the United Nations Security Council and the Global Occult Coalition, you are hereby forbidden from further involvement into any supernatural activity involving 3 specific paranormal entities. GC-92201, codename Mars, a massive winged scorpioid entity with a metallic exterior. GC-92202, codename Pluto, a large human-like entity that dramatically alters the total energy of the system directly surrounding it. GC-92203, codename Eros, a small, partially mummified, vaguely human-like entity, currently in possession of Global Occult Coalition Task Force Omni-045. The SCP-4812 research team does not believe that this is one of the 3 entities described in SCP-4812-1. Based on information recovered by our agents, it is likely that you have the Pluto entity in containment at one of your facilities. You are instructed to immediately make all efforts to destroy this entity beyond its ability to self-repair or regenerate. As directed by the Sky King Directive, you are also to turn over any information you may have regarding this entity, and either of the other 2 entities described above. Attached: Memorandum of Intent from GOC Commander Met. I figure you're at least somewhat aware of the circumstances involved here. It's likely you were the ones who ran off with Containment estate, so you have pieces that we don't have. Chances are that goes the other way too, since nobody has come asking for what we found in the Archduke's vault. I think it's also probably likely that you were the ones who dug up Pluto, and now you've got him stashed somewhere hot. That's good, but there are more steps we need to take now. I applaud you for staying ahead of the curve so far. From what we read, Pluto is a son of a bitch. I wouldn't want to be the one to figure out how to fit him in a box. Here's the long and short of it. The big blind guy, the one we call Mars, we all know the Russians were the first to find it, when it knocked those birds out of the sky back in the 60s. What you might not know is that they managed to get a tracker around it, a communicator, and we've been able to watch where it's going for the last few years. It's looking for something. The way we figure, there are 3 of these things, right? They called them profanities. You have one, now we have one, and Mars is the 3rd. But the writings we recovered say it's looking for something else. It's looking for whoever cursed these things into existence. Now it found Pluto when you dug it out of the ground, so that's 1. Our arrows it found when we accidentally unearthed it a few years ago as well, so there's 2. This entity, if it exists at all, is not SCP-4812-S, E, or K. It's the 3rd, and now it's just looking for the boss. We've been keeping an eye on it for the last few months, and it seems to be favoring some place in France. If you don't have people searching under every rock out there to find this thing, you need to. We do. Our records say it's some sort of woman, somewhere underground. We thought it might have been Eros at first, but the thing we dug up is too small to be a human woman. The physiology is all wrong too. Anyway, we need to make sure that Mars doesn't find this control entity. We think we can hurt it if we kill Eros, and you might be able to do the same if you kill Pluto. They're all connected, we figure. At least, that's what the literature implies. Eros really had been a bitch to try and kill though, so if you have any ideas there, we're willing to listen. You should do the same with yours. It's strange though, isn't it? Mars coming down like that to get at Eros. I wonder why it never did that with Pluto. And why does it keep circling those fields in France? Met. Addendum 4812.5 Internal Memo. We've confirmed what we feared. They don't know it, but they've found her. We have teams currently en route to the SCP-4812-S site. We're going to dump 50 meters of lead and concrete on top of it. It's going to be your job to find a way to shoot that thing out of the sky. Get to work. Lament.